Is there new material for Left Alone or Sadness in the future? So Sadness has 6, I think, albums or slash releases that are upcoming, and a lot of it is old music that was recorded in 2017 that just has been taking a long time to actually release. And Sadness is also going to be on a split release with some other bands. Left Alone, I don't think so. For a long time, I just considered that that project is done. But actually, recently, and by recently, I mean over the last week, I've been making some songs that I was thinking would actually fit Left Alone as a 7th release. But I think they're actually just gonna be one of the 6 upcoming Sadness albums. What guitar gear did you use on Rain? It reminds me a lot of the Angelic Process. That's cool because I like the Angelic Process. Rain, well, all of the music, so 99% of all the music I've ever recorded was on the same guitar. It's this is the guitar that I've used on, I think, everything from Sadness. It says Michael Kelly. I don't know anything about guitars really. I got this when I was 11, and I don't. Yeah, and then this was going through some amp simulators that I downloaded off the internet. Would you ever do a drone album? Yeah, I was actually thinking about this because I have another project called Comforting, which is more noise, and I was thinking about how I could do a noise slash drone album. I have done ambient albums that I don't think really count as drone. But yeah, I would definitely do a drone album, kind of like the band Natural Snow Buildings, which is a drone band. Not for Sadness though, because that has nothing to do with anything Sadness does. How many different instrument tracks are in most of these songs, aside from guitar, drums, and vocals? The majority of the music is guitar, so even things that don't necessarily sound like guitar are guitars, and I might do that with bass too. Some songs have like a piano, auxiliary drums, like a djembe, or like some broken instruments I had laying around. Like I used to have a really badly insulated mandolin, and I used to have a broken sitar. Anything that really actually like makes sound in a certain way, or in any way, I'll use somehow. But as far as Sadness goes, a lot of it is really guitar based. Oh, and there are also the software instruments, like the synths, that come on whatever DAW I'm using. What is Sadness for you? Have you other projects? I think what this question is asking is 2 questions. What is Sadness, the project, for me? Like, what does Sadness mean to me? Just like any other project I have, any other music I make, Sadness is something I can do with the things I feel and the things I think about, and it's a way I can be creative instead of just keeping everything to myself. And it's like something that makes me purposeful and useful, and it makes my feelings and ideas useful. And then, have you other projects? Yes, I have a lot of other projects. Presentations live in Mexico. I've never played live anywhere because Sadness is a solo project, so I'll need a band to play with me, and I don't have a band to play with me, but I want to do that. That would be really nice. What do each of your individual projects express or mean? Because all these songs could easily be put under the same project name, but I assume they all have different significance. And the distinction and the reason there are multiple projects, there is a reason. It's not just to have multiple projects. So Sadness, of all those that you listed there, Sadness was the first one that I started, and by the time that I started Left Alone, Sadness had been becoming not necessarily like depressing, straightforward, black metal, but Sadness was doing a lot of other things, and it was a lot more melodious as opposed to being just complete like straightforward depressing. It was more like melancholy and just sad instead of just like severely sad. So when I started Left Alone, I wanted to make, well, first of all, I wanted to make start a project that was more obscure and really exclusive and underground, which is why the first album, or demo, the first Left Alone release is this demo tape that doesn't exist on the internet. Like, I didn't put it on Bandcamp. And so Left Alone, and as the name suggests, is really, I guess it's like Sadness, but it's a lot more just dark and hopeless and like depressed and severely sad than Sadness is. If you look at all the Left Alone albums, there's a common theme among all of them as being just really dark and black and like really deeply emotional, more so than Sadness is, I think. And then Eva, when I started that, is because I wanted to make music that was cleaner in production and I guess more accessible and not like lo-fi as Sadness is, because Sadness is a lot more about atmosphere. And with Eva, I wanted to do something that was more removed from that and more, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's also like the songs, I mean, a lot of those songs are not finished and they probably never will be, so you don't really know what I'm talking about, but a lot of the songs are like riff based and not drowned in reverb riffs. So I'm talking about like melodic death metal type riffs, and it was supposed to be like a lot more epic, and with cleaner production the songs were just gonna be heavier and more like, I don't really know how to describe it, but and I have a lot of those songs and a lot of them probably won't be finished. Maybe they'll be revisited later. Well, I'll just release it under Sadness because I honestly hate the name. So in Kaskaskia, well, no, Life. And so then Life, that I started Life because I wanted to make pure, straightforward, emotive hardcore / scrams in the style of 90s emotive hardcore, which is not what Sadness is. And so that's what Life is, and that's why Life is different from all those projects. And then Kaskaskia is basically like a resurrection of Born in Abomination, which is the band I had a long time ago, and we disbanded it, but the same members are making a new project to continue making music together. But it's also different from Born in Abomination because Kaskaskia is, I mean, you'll hear it soon because the album should be done soon, but it's basically raw black metal with a lot more like synthesizer. It's like more, I think, a little bit more based on the synthesizers than it is on the guitars, and it's actually like black metal, and thematically it's different. And also that's not my solo project, so I couldn't even consider that as a contender for like Sadness or whatever. And that applies to all the projects. There's always some distinction, and as far as like the significance or what they mean to me, I mean, I guess like everything I make comes down to the meaning, the same thing. It's something I can do with the things I have inside of me to express. What are your plans for the near or distant future? What would you like to accomplish as a musician? What's your dream? So the plans are the same as they've always been, is work on the music that I have. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of Sadness albums from 2017 that I never released. So I have to work on finishing what's needed to be finished on those. And not just for Sadness, but for a lot of other projects and a lot of other things. There's a lot of old material that I don't want to leave unfinished. So I'm working on that, but I'm also working on all the current music, all the new stuff, and I'm also in bands, so collaborative efforts with other people. So not solo music, but actual like bands. What would I like to accomplish as a musician? Well, I'd like to be able to do this comfortably, as in, like live off of being an artist. I think that'd be really cool because I'd be able to freely work on things without much other responsibility. What I really like to accomplish and what the dream is first of all to immortalize the things I create. So if other people experience it and it stays with them in their memory and it affects them in some way, that immortalizes what I did. And to be able to create a meaningful experience for other people with the music, that's like what gives it. Release the music wouldn't mean anything really if it's not received and it's not experienced and appreciated. So what I want to accomplish is to be the experiences that other people have by listening to my music. And I'd also really like to be able to perform. Which Sadness album most represents your personal life and why? Well, all of them represent my personal life because that's what the music draws from. Is created out of my life. But I guess an album that is more representative of like my personal life as opposed to things I imagine and things I dream about and things that are more interior. I don't know, I guess whatever is current. So like whatever I'm working on right now, like whatever I'm composing right now is gonna represent my personal life more than things I wrote like 4 years ago. I believe your music has evolved from very depressing to there might be some hope for us after all. Do you agree? And if so, has your life philosophy changed? Well, yes. If you compare an album like Close to an album like Circle of Veins, Close is very depressing, but that's because Close was created at a certain time and it's about depressing things. A lot of the Sadness music isn't about depressive themes. A lot of it is actually about abstract feelings and like abstract thoughts or like otherworldly things, not necessarily like personal like human struggles, at least not in a like depressing way. Some of it is and some of it isn't. But then, lately, like right now, depressing things have been happening again. So whatever I create right now is gonna probably be depressing again. But the philosophy on life, has it changed? I mean, yeah, it always changes, I think. I mean, there definitely was a change from when I recorded Close to like later when I was recording something like Sun Into Water. Where did you find inspiration to make such depressive sounding music? Being really emotional and depressed. Will you release apparel in the future for Sadness? Well, I already have Flowing Downward, which is the label that printed Leave and Rain on CD. They also printed a Sadness shirt that has the logo and the Rain album cover on the back. And then a while ago, the label Winterwolf Records also printed a shirt with a different logo on it. And yes, I love merch, I love shirts, I love long sleeve shirts, and I love hoodies. So any opportunity I have to print shirts or anything in between, I'll always take it. Because so if anyone can help you, if anyone has offers or anything like that, or can help me in some way, let me know. Sadness is one of my favorite bands. Will you ever tour the US? Thank you. And like I said in a previous question, there's no band to play with, so Until that happens, no, but I would love to tour everywhere because I would love to play any show. How long does it take to make such programs do you use to make your music? Okay, so that kind of depends on certain elements of the song. For example, vocals end up taking a long time just because I've never really had the ability to freely record vocals anytime I wanted to, because it's violent screaming and it's really loud. Or wait until my voice sounded good again, because if I'm screaming all day the way I do scream, I'm not gonna sound good the next day, so there's no point in recording me. Now I can record vocals basically whenever I want to, but before I couldn't. And same thing with drums. I mean, I had a drum set for the first, I would say, 11 Sadness albums, but then I broke it. So when I wanted to record live drums, I would have to go somewhere else to record them, and I couldn't do that all the time. So that would have to, the recording and finishing a song would have to be postponed until some other time. But aside from that, the songs typically take 1 or 2 days to finish instrumentally, which is why there's a lot of music, like I said before, that was recorded in like 2017 that is still not released because there are probably like 5 seconds of vocals that still need to be tracked, and I never got around to that. I guess the process is really quick, and if it takes a long time, that's because of an inability to actually work on something. And what programs do I use? I used GarageBand when I upgraded to Logic Pro X. Album in process, yes, 6 of them, as a matter of fact. Releases like Such a Short Time and Tundra count as full-length releases or EPs or demos? I don't know, cause I don't know what the actual like official criteria is for something to be considered a full length as opposed to an EP. I guess whatever like the professionals say. Like when I think of an EP, I just think of a smaller like release. Like if a painting, if a large painting that's like 30 by 30 is a full length, then an EP is like a 15 by 15 or something like that. It's not, it's still a valid, and it's still exactly what it needs to be. It's just smaller. That's what I think of an EP is. Like it's still the body of work. Because I don't know if that's determined by the track list number, like how many tracks there are, or like how long the album runs. I really don't know. And for demos, I mean, technically all of the Sadness albums would be demos, just because of the way the production, none of it is recorded professionally in a studio or anything like that. All of it sounds really raw and demo quality, so technically they should all be demos. Because when I think of a demo, I don't, like in other music as well, when I see demo, I don't necessarily think of, oh, this is like the halfway version, or this is like the promotional before we can, go into a studio and record it better. I imagine demo as still a valid body, but it's smaller than an EP. It's more intimate and obscure, and it adds this nice touch, like this nice emotion and this nice color to it if something is a demo. So that might not be like correct, like terminologically correct, but I don't know, you shouldn't ask me, you should ask like someone who knows how this works. What's the meaning of some of your songs? I really want to know how about the songs Useless, Dejar y Seguir, Sad. Useless is exactly what it sounds like. It's about uselessness. I'm trying to remember exactly what I felt was useless. I think I felt useless. I felt my efforts were useless, the things that I do, like nothing I do is useful. Like no matter what I do, it's all useless. I don't actually really remember too much. That was a long time ago. Dejar y Seguir the lyrics to that song. That was written by Ryan Smith, and so that's a fitting title because the song is about, in a way. And that's exactly what that translates to. It's to let go and move on. Sad is literally about being sad. And Untitled 3, that song is like, it's about a specific feeling and a certain color of a certain person. Give me Kiss in October's tab guitar profile, please. So one time someone asked me for guitar pro tabs for that song, and so I tried to. I don't use tabs ever, and I don't know how to write tabs. I mean, it sounds straightforward, like just put the number for where it goes, but there are a lot more intricacies that go into playing guitar than just ta 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 ta. So I don't really know how to write tabs. I tried to, and I wrote tabs, really rough tabs for what that song is. And then it turns out I couldn't export the tabs because you have to pay for Guitar Pro, and I don't actually really want to do that. So I think I would actually prefer to make a video if you want to learn how to actually showing you how to play the songs. So if that's actually something that anyone's interested in, then let me know, because I might actually do that. What guitar pedals, amps do? So like I said earlier, this guitar that I've had since I was 11 is the Michael Kelly that I've used on everything. Most of the Sadness music, like most of it up until like recently, has been just the amp sims that come from GarageBand. Logic, I used amp sims that I downloaded, like free amp sims that you download off the internet. But that was really just because of a lack of anything else, really. Like there were some albums, like some songs where I would mic my practice amp. Like for example, songs like When the First Snow Fell, that's coming from my practice amp, which is, and when I say practice amp, I mean like one of those really, like not big amplifiers. I just put a microphone next to that, and I'm sure there are other songs like that. And that's the whole putting the microphone on the practice amp. That's what I used to do before Sadness. But around the time, I guess like a year before Sadness started, I started plugging directly into the computer. So I'll use the amp sims that come with GarageBand, which aren't really good. But then when I got Logic, I would use better amp sims that. But then when I actually got an actual amplifier, so I have an orange, I don't know exactly which one, but it's a good one. I have that, and I use that preferably. I haven't always been able to use that on Sadness recordings because like I mentioned earlier, with not always being able to record drums, I haven't always been able to reamp off of the amplifier in the cabinet. But recently I want to use the amplifier more, but again, can't always do that. I do have some pedals I like to use on recent stuff, and by recent I mean like really recent. So none of like I guess 5 of the 6 albums that I said were coming don't actually really have these pedals, like these hardware pedals. But the song on the new Split album uses these pedals. I don't really know what they are off the top of my head, but they're like distortions and delays and reverbs. I like to use that. I like to use hardware gear. I always prefer that over, sims and plugins and samples. Aside from the ADHD, how come you have a lot of older songs never put on albums? I love your older work, along with all, and was very happy to buy CD plus tape. Greatness of Your Young Despondency enclosed. I mean, that's like the big reason as to why I have so much unfinished music, is because but also because like I mentioned earlier, not always being free to record certain things. What made you change from the initial hip-hop albums to black metal? I didn't make hip-hop albums. I think you're talking about on Spotify and Last FM, there's another artist called Sadness that's like hip hop from France or something. But that's not me, that's someone else. They're just grouped in the same artist profile as a mistake. To know the words to And Hurting Colors. A lot of the music that you don't find on, like, posted online, or I mean, sorry, some lyrics that you don't find posted online exist on the physical version of the album. So like in the liner notes of like the booklet or something. So that's sometimes. That song specifically, no, I'll never release those lyrics. Do you have an acoustic atmospheric black metal project? No. Where can I find received lyrics to all of your songs? Well, like I said, on the liner notes on some of the physical releases, you'll find lyrics. I post the lyrics on the Patreon that I have a lot more. So who is her, and does Kiss in October was mean for her? Okay, so her, there is someone connected, like an actual person connected to that song, but it's also about anyone in a way, like the idea. Yes, Kids in October is about that same person. Have you ever wanted to change the name Sadness? I have thought that it's a kind of stupid name, but I wouldn't change it. I don't believe really in changing the names of projects or bands, because unless it's like at the very inception, knowing me at least, I'd want to change things a lot, and I'd end up changing things multiple times over the career, and it's just that's not useful. And Sadness is a basic enough name that it doesn't really need to be changed. But I don't really think it's that great of a name. Like I said, when I started the project, I didn't imagine it going anywhere or even like building more music off of it. How the music you are making affects you. I mean, how do you feel before creating it, during and after its creation? Do you feel better or worse? How many times do you listen to your songs to be sure that this is it, it's good and worth to upload? Do you have a lot of unpublished tracks? Well, first of all, yes, I have a lot of I have more unpublished tracks. I have way more unpublished tracks than I have published tracks. How many times do I listen to something before I upload it? I listen to it a lot because of perfectionism. Even if it's good enough, like objectively, I still find myself listening to something a million times, seeing if there's something wrong, which I guess is a problem. I think it's also good to leave things pure and how they should be naturally instead of overthinking them. But I end up listening to something a lot before, just because of second guessing myself, and I guess like having an insecurity that it's not as it should be. But yeah, I don't know how to tell you exactly how much I listen to something, but it's definitely a lot. And then as for the first question, how does it affect me? Well, like I've said before, it's something that I can do with the things I feel and all the things I have inside of me. Because if I were to completely keep it to myself and have no expression of it, it would become far beyond overwhelming very quickly. But just because I make the music doesn't necessarily make the emotions go away or anything, but it does make them feel purposeful and useful in a way. And it does make, and especially for example, with something that's really expressive, like screaming or playing drums, which is physically expressive, it is cathartic. And while doing that, because it's also something, it's not only something I can do with my feelings, but it's also something I can do with my intensity and hyperactivity, and how those two things, like hyperactivity and emotions, they're they're together. So like playing drums and vocals are two really cathartic musical means of expression, and afterwards I do feel better in a way, I guess. Like for example, if I'm really upset about something, and then I go scream. I mean, because that's always my first instinct whenever I feel any degree of emotions, is to scream or to have like a physical outburst. So if I actually do scream or do whatever, I do feel, it does calm me down, I guess, and it does make me feel better. But of course, it doesn't erase things. And during, because you also asked, how do I feel before creating it, during, and after its creation? Well, before creating it, that's when everything is most overwhelming, because it hasn't gone anywhere. It's just stayed inside of me. So all of that is in one place, and it's for me to contain, even though I can't. And then during, well, the process of making music is really, it's really trance-like, and it's really escapism. I don't know what the word would be. So when I'm recording something and I'm in it, it's very formless. Like it's like I'm dreaming, and it's just like a pure streamline of energy. And because like I mentioned before, the way the songs are made, it's not composed or planned or thought hard about. It's not organized, and there's not overthinking, at least when it comes to like making the song. Because I did mention that after, when it comes to like the finalizing process of like mixing and stuff, there is a lot. I do like think a lot about if it's good enough. But yes, the process of making music is very freeform, so there's a lot of room for me to run around and be free when I'm actually performing and not having to think about things. And so it's very dreamlike, and it removes you, I guess, from a lot of bounds, and it's really beautiful and cathartic to really have a streamlined way to process feelings and things like that. And during the process of, for example, recording vocals or drums, something that it can make use of my hyperactivity, and that's even more immersive than like if I'm playing guitar, because I mean the guitar parts are they do require focus a lot of the time, but when it comes to like the vocals and the drums, both of those are just completely basic, and it's just me being free. And like, for example, the drums, none of the drums are composed at all going into the song. Like all this on the songs, the drums are really just entirely improvised the whole way through the song. So it's really just like I'm running around free on the playground, and I'm just being formless and purely streamlined, expressive. And playing drums is really expressive, and that's why you hear a lot of mistakes on the drums in a lot of songs. It's because none of it was ever planned. And when it comes to vocals, while I'm in the process of recording the vocals, it kind of makes me feel above the feelings in a way. Like obviously I'm especially if there's a specific thing that makes me emotional, that I'm screaming about or thinking about while I'm screaming, I'm gonna be feeling that the way through. But I guess it's like the screaming is a good coping mechanism, because when I'm actually screaming, I'm kind of removed from everything, and it's a very like trance-like experience where I'm not like entirely overwhelmed. It's hard to explain. But then after I make this song, there's the nice feeling of capturing it, of capturing whatever it is I wanted to capture, and knowing that it's immortalized, and knowing that I did something with myself, and I did something with that, and it created something, and I proved myself with it. But that doesn't, just because I created a song doesn't erase. For example, if something that inspired the song is really painful, it doesn't take away from how painful that was. It just became something to do with it, and in a way, giving purpose to it makes it less painful. And of course, during the process of actually performing, it's cathartic, but afterwards, it's still gonna be painful. But if the song is something about something that isn't necessarily painful, then afterwards, like I said, there's a beautiful feeling to having captured something beautiful. Where did the title Leave come from, and what was the album inspired by? And will there be any shirts or merch of the original Sadness logo? So I don't know what you mean by the original Sadness logo, because that could either be the one from 2014, a long time ago, that's like computer, like it was created on, I didn't make it, someone else, I think his name was James Campbell, made it for me. It was like a graphic design computer. There's that one, and it's like more horizontal. There's that one, and then there's the other one that's hand-drawn, and it's more vertical, and it was the profile picture on the Sadness page before this current logo. So if you're referring to the old one, there are shirts, like I mentioned earlier, from Winterwolf Records with that logo on it. I don't know if they're still in stock, but I also don't really want to make any more merch with that logo. As a matter of fact, the reason I have the new logo, which was created by Carlos Agras, is because I wanted to put a logo on merch. So I'm not going to go back to that old logo. And the other one, the one that was hand-drawn, I tried putting that on merch, but the problem with that is I drew it on 2 pieces of paper that I like taped where the paper connects, because the design ended up being too tall for the one page, because it's like all these like tree branches or whatever. And so to upload that image, I mean, I did try like taking a picture of the 2 pieces of paper connected to each other, but then it kind of looked cool in the way that it was lo-fi and badly scanned or whatever. But every time I would try to put that on a shirt, whoever wanted to print this shirt would say that, oh, this is too bad quality or something. Especially because it's hard to make that, it's even harder to make that transparent, because, you know, all the lighting and stuff and all these different things. And so the image that's actually on the profile picture when I uploaded it, and the image that's on like album covers that you'll see, is cut off at the top. You might have noticed that it's cut off at the top where the 2 pieces of paper connect, because that is actually scanned on a scanner, which only fits 1 piece of paper. And so if I were to put that on a shirt, it would look stupid, because there's literally like an immediate cutoff at the top, and it just looks awkward. So no, I'm not making a shirt out of that. And then what else did you say? The Leave album. That album was inspired by, that album was inspired by heartbreak. That album really is about heartbreak and longing. And then the name Leave, I don't actually remember what that meant exactly. I do know that I do remember that it was hard to think of an actual album title, but I do remember that Leave came to me and that felt right without even really thinking too much about meticulously composing an album title. Why you choose a DSBM music? Okay, so first of all, I don't actually think Sadness can actually be considered DSBM, and I don't say that because I want to remove myself from DSBM because I want to be original or something, but if you listen to the other DSBM bands, they actually sound like black metal because it's a black metal genre, and they don't, I don't know, sad. I always thought that Sadness was something that couldn't really be called DSBM, let alone black metal, but I guess that's, if everyone calls it DSBM, then I guess it's DSBM. I mean, albums like Wounded Solitude are pretty DSBM, and To Despair Of, but everything else, I think would be kind of a stretch to call it DSBM. Like that's just like, because I mean, I'm and the reason I'm saying is because but anyway, there definitely is an influence from DSBM on the music, and I guess if the question's asking why that. And Sadness always, from the beginning, and because I talked about the beginning, Sadness was the album Close, and it was only going to be that. And Close, like, people consider a DSBM album. The sound of Close, like I mentioned before, it was like, when I made Close, I wanted to make sad music that was raw, straightforward, and not technical in any way, and there are no frills. It's just straightforward and sad. And DSBM does that a lot. But yes, I guess I choose to make, or I was inspired by DSBM because of the affinity I have with it, because I've always loved sad and really, like, obviously sad music, like really, like, emotionally evocative music. And also I've always liked the approach to DSBM, like the lo-fi and the minimalist approach to, like, depressive black metal, but especially the way it's very direct in how deeply sad the music is. I always loved music that was very obvious in how emotional it was. I wanted to make music that was just as emotional as I am. How to Be Beautiful Like You. I'm not beautiful. I don't think I'm beautiful. Has your music been helpful to you in the regards of mental health? Right, so if I had never had music if I could never create music, and like I said, making music is something to do with all my feelings. If I never had that, I would not have that expression. So all my feelings would stay inside of me, and I already don't have any real, like, emotional management skills. And so if I didn't have music, I would be far more severe, and I would have got myself in a lot more issues than I already have. And I mean, honestly, I probably wouldn't even be alive if I never could make music, because, and honestly, I don't have anything else. I'm not good at anything else, and I'm pretty much a complete failure in, like, everything else. So, but as far as, like, mental health, the music, it's something to do. I keep saying this, it's something to do. I'm doing something with all the things that are going on in my head and in my feelings, and that gives it a direction to go, instead of staying inside of me in a negative and destructive way. It gives it something. It takes it somewhere. It allows it to move elsewhere outside of, like, my internally, and that does help. And it's definitely the most peaceful thing I can think of that I can do with my feelings, because anything else I do to express myself is destructive and it's extreme, which is why I mentioned that if I never had music, that I would have been far more severe, and I would have been in a lot more trouble, and I would have caused a lot more problems, just because of the way I've always been. when it comes to dealing with my feelings. How did it all begin? Okay. So, sadness started in July of 2014. At this time, the music that I had been making was obviously in other projects. And I had been making music that was a lot more, at least I was trying to be a lot more composed and organized and structured when it came to the whole creation. So not necessarily even in the music, but conceptually and the way things connect outside of the music. So like the like lyrics and a lot of things that revolve around the whole body of work that was very composed. I wanted to be very composed and meticulous, and it was a lot of effort and a lot of like stepping up and concentration went into it. All of which, like all of these things like organization and concentration and structure, I'm not good at that at all. For me, everything that isn't streamlined and flows naturally, perfectly, effortlessly is really overwhelming. But I was making music, and I was also writing music with like an intense fixation on perfection and being as epic and grand as possible. All the music I was making, and not all of it, but a lot of the main things I was focusing on at the time were things that I was considering like my grand master work, like my magnus opus or whatever. And that's what I wanted. And I was fine concentrating that much and working that hard on that music, on those creations. But when it came time, or like by the time when I made Close, which is the first Sadness album, I was really, really, really depressed and upset, and I was just going through some stuff personally, and I was very unwell at the time, and naturally I'm very disorganized. But also when you're severely unhappy and depressed, it's hard to really bring yourself to do really basic things anyway. And so I was really depressed about certain things. And if I'm gonna make music about that, I'm not gonna sit down and compose like this epic masterpiece that's technical and has all this thought and effort gone into it. Like that's so unnecessarily demanding of severe emotions and severe just depression. Like if I were to translate the way I was feeling at the time that I made Close into music, into art, it wouldn't be this meticulously structured technical thing. It would be the opposite of that. It would be exactly what Close was. And Close, I wanted to make that an album. I wanted to make songs that were just raw, completely raw and effortless and just straightforward and purely emotional and nothing else. They're not good songs. They're not like professional. They're not impressive songs or anything. They're just my chaotic feelings and my intense, extreme feelings expressed in a way that is just streamlined and effortless, and that doesn't require all this mental strain on organizing things and composing things. It was just a way for me to be expressive and not have to think about it, just be expressive and do something with how I was feeling. And so I made that album Close because I specifically said to myself I wanted to make, because I was making all this other structured, meticulous music, high effort music, and I wanted to do something that didn't require all this effort. So that's what Close was, and it wasn't supposed to be good or anything. It wasn't even supposed to gain any attention. I just made that like album. I thought it was like it, and it was very expressive, but I didn't imagine it going anywhere at all. As a matter of fact, the plan was to just put it on like 10 CDs and 10 tapes, and that would be it. It would just be this obscure thing floating around in like the ether of music that like 5 people knew about, and it was just like this. It wasn't even like a good album. It was just there, and it was just really depressing and just really sad music. And so that's how Sadness started. Yeah, it had to be in like July of 2000, because I recorded that album. And so the way that started actually was, I don't think I actually was thinking to myself, I'm gonna make this album, and then I made that album. I remember one day I was really sad and upset, and I had my acoustic guitar, and I was just playing these things, like I was just playing around, and I recorded it on like this 8-track that I had, and those were the acoustic passages that you hear on Lonely, on Sad, and on Life Would Be So Beautiful. That's where it actually started. And so, because I recorded them because I was liking what I was playing, and so I built the album off of those. And so I made that album in about a week, and I released it on July 9th. So so I'm pretty sure that whole thing started in the beginning of July of 2014. Who is the person behind Sadness? How does he, she live? Why the title Sadness? What the inspiration for starting? So again, the inspiration for starting was because I wanted to make that kind of music that was just really sad and straightforward, emotional and raw and low effort. And well, the person behind Sadness is me, and the title Sadness, I mean, I called the project Sadness because well, actually I wanted to call it Sad, just the word sad, because I thought that I preferred that over Sadness. I thought sad would fit better, and that was just really straightforward and really like, I'm like, this is sad. It wasn't like sadness as like a more broad concept, like sad, I'm really fucking sad. That's kind of what it was. I couldn't do that because there's a black metal band called Sad from Greece that I listened to at the time. Actually, I used to listen to the song Dichotomy a lot at the time because I love that song. And so since there's an active band in black metal called Sad, I wasn't gonna call this Sad. I wasn't gonna call the project Sad, so I just called it Sadness because that was the next best thing. What's the process of creating a song? What inspires you? So the things that inspire the songs is everything. Everything in which I find beauty, or anything that inspires or elicits some sort of emotional stimulation, is inspiration for creating. And I have a tendency to need to capture everything that I experience, which is a lot, but there's a wide range of things that can inspire me. It could be actual events that happen to me. It could be deep, inexplicable feelings or abstract feelings, or like my emotional response to certain things, like really minuscule things that I experience, or dreams. That's largely inspired by dreams and daydreaming. Basically anything that is in any way emotional to me can become the basis for a song, or not even just the basis, but anything that goes into the song. All the music are feelings. So if there's any feeling attached to anything, then that's going to inspire a song. And then as far as the process for creating a song, and so Sadness is guitar based. Most of the sounds come from a guitar, and the guitar is the basis of the song, because that's what I do first. And like I said before, the songs aren't plans and they're not composed. The only thing that precedes or predecesses, the only thing that predecesses the song is the inspiration that I have behind it. Or sometimes I might even start a song without actually being conscious of what it's even about in any way. But typically what happens is I do the guitars, and since it's not like structured or planned, the song is made up as I go along. I might just hit record and just play and make it up as the song progresses. And then that being the basis, I can add things on top of that. But it always starts with the guitar, except for a couple songs, I think. Well, there's one song, my German's not gonna be amazing, but Allmählich, that song was actually I recorded the drums without having an idea what the guitars would be. I just recorded a drum track and then I put guitars over that. But I think that's it. If the beginning of a song has something that's not guitars, then that song would start with that instrument or whatever that was. But the basis is the guitars. And since the drums are live, like real drums, most of the time, like not like almost all the time, except for the first album, and then after I stopped having a drum set, the drums would come later after the guitars. And so, and when I go into a song, sometimes I might have ideas for other things, like I might have an idea for how it's gonna end, and what I need to do is get there, or what I need to do is bridge the two ideas I already have so I can get to the other idea. And sometimes while I'm making the song up, I know how to, like in my head as I'm recording, I come up with ideas for what is gonna go on top of that or what's gonna happen later. Sometimes I'll come up with ideas, well actually a lot of the time I'll come up with ideas or I'll compose songs or ideas in my head when I'm not with any instrument and I'm not actually like making the music. So if I'm outside or if I'm doing something else, then I can go and actually like record that and capture that idea. But typically, regardless of whether or not the ideas are there or they happen later, I start off with the guitars, all the guitars, and then before I used to have a drum set that I could play whenever I wanted to. And so like on albums from like Fading Days Away until I think Tundra was the last one. Yeah, from everything from Fading Days Away until Tundra, I used the drum set that I had, which I could just go and record on whenever I felt like it. And so after I did the guitars, I might just go straight to the drums before going to like bass and stuff like that, especially because it's a lot better to track to a drum track. So instead of like doing the bass before the drums, I don't know if I ever actually really did that. But if for whatever reason I couldn't get to the drums and I could only record the bass, I might like do the bass first, and then vocals would always come last. And then after vocals, if I want to add extra sounds or something, I might do that. But then after Tundra, well, Rose Lavender used live drums, but they weren't the drums that I had. And after that, I used programmed drums. So while I was making up the guitar parts for the song, I could also program the drum part that goes with it, which is not preferable. I don't like using MIDI drums. I always prefer to actually play the drums, but whatever. I'm trying to think of exceptions to that process, but that's generally how songs are made. Not much thought goes into it. And if thought does go into it, it's outside of actually sitting down and recording it. Because I have a lot of ideas. I would have a lot of ideas for songs that I still haven't recorded. I just needed to wait until I could actually put them down. And I'm sure I still have a lot of song ideas from years ago that I'm still just retaining. Yeah, I actually have a lot of that you can think of. Okay, so I'm gonna have to think about that one because I don't really know what is expected I feel like people might think that the music is inspired by tangible things that I can easily explain with words. But a lot of times the songs are created after really specific feelings attached to really, really specific things that may not seem to be that emotionally significant, or it may seem strange that I'm so fixated on something so specific. And it's hard to describe, or it's hard to explain, but really, and I guess like some really juvenile things. I guess like I don't know what's really expected and what's not, but I imagine I know there are certain songs, I'm not gonna get into what they're about, just because of how specific it is, whatever it is that inspired it or influenced it, and because it's not really like because people consider it DSBM, and a lot of them songs are not at all about depression or suicide or anything like that. Sometimes they're about something, like emotional, obviously, but not like that. It can be really personal in a different way that I don't really know how to really describe well without really getting into the specifics, which I don't actually really feel like comfortable doing. But maybe what you meant by influences, you meant musical influences, and I guess I don't know how surprising it would be for some things, because like I said, I mean, you could hear the similarities, I guess, if I told you that, like, for example, I'm inspired by like amateur music, like really childish music, or really just juvenile music that to me was always really emotional in a certain way, but people might not actually like take it seriously if I told them that, like, hey, I used to really love the song Live Like There's No Tomorrow by Selena Gomez, or the Camp Rock soundtrack